Way back in the spring of 1990, 10-year-old me was given a $5 allowance. In search of something to spend my money on, I came upon something fantastic at my local convenience store newsstand. It was then that I started a lifelong obsession with the gold standard of sequential art, the comic book. Now, as an old man, I have decided to open up some old boxes and dig into my comic book collection. I decided it's time for me to review and analyze the illustrations and artists that made me comics crazy. Chris Crazy House here with the Amazing Spider-Man 332. One of the very first comics that I ever bought with my own money, with my own allowance money. And I remember when I bought it, I was hanging out with my grandfather. He was going to buy his newspaper and his lottery ticket at a little convenience store called Quick Picks. And I looked at the comic book shelf to see what I wanted to buy. And this book stuck out right at me on the shelf. It was begging me to buy it. And I got it. And looking at the cover, you can tell why I bought it. Okay, this is a cover drawn by Erik Larsen. I believe the inks are done by Mike Macklin. And it's got Venom coming right at you. So this book has the return of Venom. So previously, Venom had been drawn and co-created by Todd McFarlane. But now Erik Larsen is the regular penciler on The Amazing Spider-Man. And this is the return of Venom. And I think maybe it's just bias based on when I started reading the comics. But I prefer Erik Larsen's version of Venom more than I prefer Todd McFarlane's. Not to say Todd McFarlane's version is bad, but I just like the way Erik Larsen draws Venom. He always had the drooly mouth, the really disgusting mouth, and the big teeth and big bulging hulking muscles. And like I said, he's coming right at you. You barely see Spider-Man. You can only see his hands kind of posted up. And the dialogue, I love it. Right on the cover. You rarely see dialogue on the cover like this. Usually it's just kind of like a caption or something. But in this, Venom has his own dialogue saying, "Kiss your Aunt May goodbye, Spider-Man. You're going to die." So what's not to love from a 10-year-old's perspective as far as picking up this comic? So we're going to take a look inside. You can see it's old. Like I said, I've had it ever since then. The May of 1990, I believe. I probably brought it in April, though. We are going to look at some of the ads in these comic books as I do this show. This is one of the important ads of that time. You got Super C, or the sequel to Contra. You also got Snake's Revenge, which is the sequel to Metal Gear. So that's what they're advertising on this book. Lots of great classic video game ads in these comic books as well. So it's not just the nostalgia of the comics, but you got nostalgic things going on as far as video games as well. And this is kind of what we came for. I feel like this is a great introduction page. Very well done with the sequencing. A little spider kind of coming down and Venom eating the spider. That's kind of like a preview of what he wants to do to Spider-Man. You know, the little spider's kind of coming down unaware, and out of the shadows you see that mouth. Like I said, I love the way Erik Larsen drew that mouth. Very disgusting, very creepy. This is when Venom was scary. Okay, this is when he was a big bad villain. I think they kind of overdone it with different symbiotes nowadays, but this is back when Venom was the scary serial killer type. And this is what we really came for here. This splash page here of Venom walking down in the sewers. And you can see just how big and bulging his muscles are. I remember as a kid trying to figure out how this kind of artwork was done. You know, I started kind of my journey into artwork, but I couldn't understand, you know, the fact that they had this black figure here and they just kind of filled in, used some blue for the outlines. I couldn't figure out how to do that. I tried it several times with my own markers and it wasn't coming out right. probably because I didn't have the right tools. Obviously now with digital it's a lot easier to accomplish, but you know, back then it wasn't as easy, you know, to kind of take those inked lines and kind of put that in there. But it works well because he's coming out of darkness, but you still see that form perfectly. And I love this panel right here of, you know, Venom being revealed as Eddie Brock. You know, and I like the way they titled down the dialogue. Now, this is before I knew anything about who was the writer or who the artist was. I just knew I loved the way this comic book looked, so I bought it. So this is a very innocent time for me as far as being a comic book collector. I didn't even know who Erik Larsen was, but I knew I liked his artwork. So I love that reveal. And also you see how down here, the way Eddie Brock thinks is like if he makes himself stronger, him with the symbiote will be even more powerful. So you see how he's lifting weights here, and I was like, how in the hell? 10-year-old me was like, how in the hell is this possible? You know, my brother was a big weightlifter back in the day, and like, you know, I seen how much weight he was putting up. He could put up one of these maybe, but this dude has 3 of them put together. That's some serious weight there, and he's putting it up over his head at that. I would not recommend doing that, folks, but I guess if you're Eddie Brock / Venom, that's easy work for you. So as we go in here, you see that, you know, Spider-Man is, you know, blissfully unaware that Venom is looking for him. And, you know, he's just kind of doing like a little charity event, lifting up motorcycles for, I think that's supposed to be Jay Leno back in the day. And Spider-Man taking pictures there. That's kind of like a little Jimmy Olsen nod. It's not really Jimmy Olsen, but, you know, a lot of artists like to put little nods to other comic books in comic books. And that's kind of like what you get right here. And as Spider-Man, his spider senses goes off, you got the characters Sticks and Stone show up. And I didn't know who these characters were. These are not Marvel characters or villains that I was familiar with. I think they were created for this comic specifically by Erik Larsen, or no, I think Todd McFarlane created them, but they appear in this book as well. And you have the guy named Sticks. Like if he touches anything, he's almost kind of like a living cancer. He causes it to deteriorate. And his partner Stone is just this big muscular guy that has all this technology like cannons and rocket sleds that he rides on. And, you know, that's what, and they're hired by this guy named Jonathan Caesar, who is obsessed with Mary Jane. And they don't know that Mary Jane is actually married to Peter Parker and Peter Parker is Spider-Man. They just know every time Mary Jane is in trouble, Spider-Man shows up. So they put that enough together to say, you know, to hire these bad guys to get rid of Spider-Man. Very cool panel of the character trying to slash Spider-Man with his death hands and Spider-Man jumping over. Very acrobatic. I love how this is done, where you still get to see just how acrobatic Spider-Man is, the way he does his splits and stuff, and he's upside down and he's shooting his webs. Very well done. It tells the story very well. And even here, where you get the character of Stone showing up to rescue his partner, and, you know, love just how these poses are done. As a kid, I was loving it and trying to emulate how these poses were drawn. I would trace them first, and then I would try to do them myself as well. And, you know, this way this paneling is done, this is something that I noticed that Erik Larsen does a lot, these types of really thin panels. And I think that's one of the things that somewhat informs my own art style, because I would never have thought to do this on my own. I had to see his type of work to even think to do something like this, because I had never seen that before. Another classic game, Bionic Commando, classic ad from Capcom on this page. They always have some very interesting artwork. I guess just like comic books, they had to have really cool artwork to sell these games, but the game looked nothing like what was actually on the cover. But, you know, you see here, Sticks is rescued by his partner Stone. And something that I also noticed, that, you know, how Spider-Man, how he emotes with his mask, even though that should be physically impossible. but they found a way to do it in the comic books. I always thought that was very interesting, how he, can emote with his mask, even though that he should not be able to do that. Another great establishing shot. You always want to have a good establishing shot of your hero or whatever when you go to a next page or you go to the next section of the book. So make sure you know where the hero is at or where the hero is going. And here Spider-Man's coming back to his apartment with Mary Jane, and he's on a date with her. It looks like they're in Paris. So this is a trick shot where he makes it look like they're hanging out in Paris, but they're actually not. They're on the set of one of her shows there, and they're just kind of sitting there having lunch with the props and whatnot. And mistakenly, Peter actually eats one of the props, thinking it's a real hot dog, and he gets sick kind of eating it there. So there's a little bit more story to this where, Venom is that psychopath who will follow you and try to get to you anywhere. And he actually winds up showing up to Aunt May's house looking for Peter Parker. So you see him down here with the badass leather jacket kind of towering over Aunt May. And they kind of allude to that, Venom is a threat because he might hurt Aunt May. Later, it's revealed that obviously Venom does have some sort of code of ethics where he does not hurt innocent people. And he considers Aunt May to be innocent, so he won't hurt her. But in here, they kind of, make it seem like he's going to be more of a threat in that way. And just so you know, if you guys like comics, your boy Chris Crazy House does comics too. Got my comic book Nukkull-Headz going on right now. It is on sale online at my online store. Issues 1, issue 2, and issue 3 are on sale at the Chris Crazy House store. The links will be in the description box as well as the comments section. So the story is basically that this little girl named Angie goes on an adventure with these group of pirates called the Nukkull-Headz so that they can save the lands of Dream from the evil realm of Nightmare. And there are some people out there who actually do have this issue right here, but they don't realize that there's also a second and a third issue that are available to buy at my online store. So if you haven't got those issues, man, go pick it up. A lot of people usually buy that first one when I do a show, and then they never come back for 2 and 3, man. You got to come back for the 2 and 3 so you can get the rest of the story. Please do. So once again, my online store, the links will be in the description box and pinned in the comment section of this video. On this page, you get to see Mary Jane confront the man that is obsessed with her, this rich guy named Jonathan Caesar. And at this time in the 80s, Mary Jane is actually working on a soap opera. So she's actually a very popular actress at the time. And she has a lot of weird, obsessed fans that just love her to death and would do anything to get close to her. So she confronts Jonathan Caesar by saying, hey, leave Spider-Man alone. I'm the one that's getting away from you. Not Spider-Man has nothing to do with it because she's, concerned for her husband. She doesn't want her husband to get hurt. But, this guy's a psychopath, so he doesn't really give a damn about that. And you find out here that he's the one that hired these two goons, Sticks and Stone. Now, once again, these guys, they're also talking about how they have a hard time keeping track of Spider-Man and trying to follow him. That's because they don't know that Spider-Man actually has a spider sense, and he's able to pick up on them when they go, when they're trying to catch him. So that's something that comes up in the part 2 of this story here. But you have Spider-Man sitting here chilling, watching TV, and then his Aunt May calls him and says that Eddie Brock stopped by. Now, even though he stopped by and didn't hurt Aunt May is aware because she's been watching the news that Venom, a.k.a. Eddie Brock, is at large. So she's been seeing him on the news as a bad guy, and she thinks that, Peter might not know that his buddy is a bad guy because Eddie Brock keeps saying that he's friends with Peter. So here's another interesting panel that I didn't understand at first. I was like, is he wearing half his mask? What's going on here? That's 10-year-old me. Now I kind of understand that they're kind of, just alluding to how Peter Parker is Spider-Man and kind of showing the half of his personality there. It's more of a, it's not meant to be taken literally. This is not a literal panel. This is more of what's kind of going on inside of his head. So, you know, Eddie Brock tells Peter to meet him in the park. That's where they're going to have their big fight. And this cop is riding down on Spider-Man. He's wondering what the heck is going on. But if you notice, you start seeing these little black tendrils coming up behind him. So that's where Peter realizes that it is actually Venom. Now, something that's very interesting about the Venom character is that because of the alien symbiote, Peter cannot pick him up on his spider sense. So because the alien was once bonded with Spider-Man, he knows how to evade the spider sense, which also makes Venom an even more deadly villain. Great panel, action panel right here. I love this panel. This is actually one of my favorites here, especially in this book. But you see Venom kind of coming down on Spider-Man, trying to crush him with both hands. You can see that the suit is still kind of building around him. So you kind of follow that action. Like this part right here, where his fist hit the ground, is where your eyes are drawn to, but you kind of follow it up and you see that his suit is still spreading around him and Spider-Man is jumping out of the way. So great way to convey this action. I know when Eric Larson drew this, I'm sure he had a great time drawing this panel, because this is a great panel. You got stuff, you even got debris coming out of the panel line. This is something that I learned as time went on, as far as like doing comic book pages and panels. You got the action word kind of coming out. You have debris coming out of here. Spider-Man's body's kind of peeking out of the panel. Just adds a little bit more action. The fact that it's breaking away from the panels. It's not just all inside, but the action is so furious and so energetic that it's actually breaking out of the panel. I think that's a great way to design stuff. Don't do it all the time, but every once in a while, it's okay. So Peter Parker, Spider-Man, tries to get away, but Venom catches him with the web. And, you know, as all the people are trying to leave the park, Venom is creeping up on Spider-Man here. Now, this is actually an interesting panel. I kind of, once again, I think this is where you actually see somewhat of a mistake, at least in my opinion, where Venom catches up with Spider-Man. He kind of grabs his head, he palms his head like that, and the symbiote starts spreading over Spider-Man's face to kind of choke him out. But if you notice here, because Spider-Man's arm is in the way, I guess they wanted to have more of Venom's head showing, but that was kind of unnecessary. I think they should have just kind of left the panel the way it was, where his head is actually still in proportion, but they stretched his head out so you can see more of his head, and it's not covered up by the arm. I'm wondering if Eric Larson actually drew that, or was that an editing job done after he was finished? This seems more like an editing job, because they would edit certain comic books to, I guess, make panels jump out more, or do what they wanted to see. So I'm wondering if someone pulled that head up a little bit, like cut it with some, like, you know, just with some X-Acto knife or whatever, and pulled it up and made it stick out more. I'm wondering if that's what happened. But in order for Spider-Man to kind of get out of this, he kind of just shoots his web out blindly, grabs some trees and pulls real hard, and a tree actually comes out of the roots and hits Venom in the back. I don't know how that's possible, but, you know, it's a comic book. The physics of that doesn't seem like that's how things will work, but that's just kind of how it works in the comic book. You got Venom here going after Spider-Man once again. Great way of showcasing how they move and glide through the sky. Amazing poses. Venom's kind of, you know, someone that muscular probably shouldn't be able to do moves like this, but, you know, like I said, it's a comic book, so you kind of go along with it. Spider-Man kind of going through the sky, getting a car thrown at him. And what happens in this book is Venom throws a taxi cab at Spider-Man. It misses Spider-Man, but it hits a coach that's in the park. And there's like a black family there, and like the baby flies out of the mama's hands and I think goes down into the river. So Venom actually catches Spider-Man and ties him up and is about to tear him into pieces, but everyone hears the baby crying, or the family crying, because the baby just fell down into the water. And you see the worried parents here, and you see a web coming in there. So this is one of those misleading panels. You think Spider-Man is saving the baby, but it's actually Venom. Venom saves the baby. And once again, like I said, he has kind of a twisted sense of morality where he believes innocent people or innocent creatures should not be hurt. So, of course, he saves the baby. And he says, I was innocent once. One of the few times he refers to himself in the singular. So, you know, you hear the police coming. Spider-Man finally does break free, but Venom runs away. And what happened? I'm trying to figure out where the explosion came from here. Okay, so I guess there was gas leaking out of the taxi that hit that carriage. So Spider-Man and the Black family gets out of the way. And explosion at the end here. And, you know, Spider-Man explains to the police what happened, but then he decides to leave and worry about what's going to happen with Venom. And great pose for Spider-Man leaving. Now, this is kind of how things were done back in the day. When I do my comic books, I like to kind of leave off on a cliffhanger as well, but I like to make the panel a little bit bigger with the whatever I'm leaving off with. This one's kind of done very small, but this is kind of how comics were done back then. It's not, they don't give you a giant punch at the end unless it's absolutely necessary because they got to make that page count. But you see Sticks and Stone down in the sewers kind of trying to figure out how they're going to track Spider-Man. And they say, if Venom doesn't get Spider-Man, we will. And you're going to see that in the next issue. And I'm definitely going to be doing the next issue where Sticks and Stone try to go down to the sewers and, follow Venom in order for them to get Spider-Man as well. And we're definitely going to be doing that in the next episode of Chris Crazy House Presents Comics Crazy. Let's take a quick look at one of the ads here. I remember seeing this ad. I've never played this at all. I never played this game. It's called Demon Sword, but I used to see this ad a lot on a lot of comic books from this era. So, once again, classic nostalgia with the comics, but also classic nostalgia with the video game ads. So, you folks can let me know what you thought of Spider-Man 332. I really, really enjoyed this comic, still do. I love the cover. I love the artwork. I think the action is appropriate. What I miss a lot in modern, especially a lot of modern Marvel comics, is the action is kind of really stiff. Nothing really happens. There's a lot of talking. It's not until there's like a big event where they have any real action. But with these old comics, every issue had to have some great action in it. And you got 2 action sequences here. One with Sticks trying to kill Spider-Man at the beginning. And then you got Venom and Spider-Man fighting in the park at the end. I think that's a great thing to have. Like that great climactic action scene at the end. So you folks let me know how you feel about it. If you enjoy these comics that I'll be reviewing in my Comics Crazy, please go ahead and like this video and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more episodes of this show. So anyway, Chris Crazy House signing out. Peace.